Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. My name is Jay from Super Bracket Bros, the podcast that takes your favorite fictional characters from across the multiverse and throws them into a tournament against each other to find out just who is the best of the best. At the time of this recording, we are blasting our way through our kaiju tournament featuring the likes of Godzilla, King Kong, but also some other unexpected faces like Bowser from Bowser's Fury and Calamity Ganon from Breath of the Wild. To give you an idea of what our show is like, we are much more concerned with the power of friendship than, say, we are with how many times the speed of light the Flash goes. We attempt to be the podcast version of playing with action figures as a kid. I'll also do a little extra plug here. I'm also a bit of an editor, an audio producer, currently on the search for folks that need help bringing their podcast vision to life. But that pretty much does it for me. Now, I don't want to talk about any of that today. Many folks might think that because of the nature of the show I just described, which is heavily character-focused, we take deep dives into characters and we analyze them, right? That I might pick a video game with a strong protagonist or antagonist. Instead, I bring you a game that doesn't have a single character in it whose name isn't randomly generated. Today, I'm going to be discussing the 1994 XCOM UFO Defense, developed by Mythos Games, founded by Julian Gallup, and published by MicroProse. A game that came out before I was born, but yet has become my favorite game of all time. Before we get into how I think this game may have literally helped shape my brain and how I think to this day, let's just focus on what this game is. You may be a bit more familiar with the modern XCOM without a hyphen, Enemy Unknown from 2012, and the most recent mainline release, XCOM 2 from 2016. Just like the newest iterations, XCOM with a hyphen is a multifaceted strategy game where you play the role of the commander of an international extraterrestrial combat force known as XCOM. There are two main modes to the game. You have your Geoscape and Battlescape. In the Geoscape, you are planning your long-term strategy for defending Earth, constructing bases across the globe with sufficient infrastructure depending on their purpose. Do you want to build an outpost just for detecting UFOs? You can do that. Just make sure your bases are properly defended, lest they come under attack from an alien battleship late in the game. You must recruit soldiers to be able to send out missions and inevitably recruit new soldiers when those missions go awry. Each soldier decked out with totally unique stats as well, so that you can decide, based on their individual strengths, if they're capable of bringing the hefty blaster launcher into battle, or if they're better suited for double-wielding laser pistols and acting as a scout. You will decide what your scientists should research, and you'll have to make difficult decisions about where your technology will advance with limited time and resources. You'll have to manage the happiness of individual nations, as how well protected they are leads to what resources they're able to provide you. If France is rebuilding Paris after you fail to protect it, then they won't be able to commit resources your way and may eventually cut off funding completely if you let things get out of hand. So while you plan your long-term strategy, allocate resources and soldiers across the globe, you also have to shoot down UFO threats using your Interceptor Squadron. Once you've successfully done so, then you can send in your Sky Ranger filled with your latest squad, mixed with jaded veterans and lowly and unreliable rookies. But that's where you enter your Battlescape. This is the second major mode of gameplay you will experience. This is the boots-on-the-ground tactics, where you will maneuver your soldiers tile by tile in turn-based combat to eliminate any and all aliens in a given area. Most of the missions you go on will involve raiding the enemy UFOs you shoot down. In addition to that, there are terror missions and cityscapes where you must defend the citizens of Earth one by one. Later in the game, you'll have to infiltrate and destroy alien bases. During these battles, all of your soldiers have a few different stats to keep track of. Their time units, how many actions they can take per turn. If you max out your time units each turn, then stamina will start to slowly diminish as well. It's like time units replenish every turn, whereas stamina last is a stat that gets used up over the course of an entire battle. You have their bravery, which will go down as their comrades fall in battle, or they are psionically attacked by aliens. And of course, their health. There are also other stats that don't go up and down during battle, like accuracy and reactions, but all of which can be improved upon by how often they use that stat. So if there's a soldier with a high stamina and high time units, then you can focus on building those stats by having them move a lot during battle. Fun and final fact about soldier stats, as I know that's already maybe more in depth than I needed to go, is that there are more than 67 billion unique dispositions your soldiers can have. After you've decked out your squad with the latest equipment, your engineers and scientists have cooked up, then you send them into battle, where you move tile by tile and eliminate alien forces. Of course, every alien race dictates a different strategy. Sectoids will mess with your mind, but are pretty squishy. The snake men are particularly hardy, but you should be really focusing on their companion species. The chrysalid, which can turn your own forces against you by turning them into mindless zombies. Now, I'm not going to bore you with every single enemy type, but they're all unique and present unique challenges, so you must be prepared for anything, and the game expertly, slowly introduces you to all of them, and I think a really interesting way. Between the geoscape and the battlescape, every decision influences your next, and can either set you up for ultimate success, or cascade your campaign into utter failure. And that's just talking about the core gameplay. It doesn't touch the fact that this game also embodies survival horror elements. Just like a horror game, you have to manage your resources carefully, but beyond that, the soundtrack is immaculate and will always put me on edge to this very day. The death sounds of the aliens are iconic and unique, but forever will the screams of my own soldiers and civilians be forever burned into my memory. The atmosphere that this 1994 game creates amazed me as a kid and gave me nightmares, but looking back at it at its time and place, it amazes me even more in 2023. Everything about this game coalesces to create an essential strategy gaming experience. Now, circling back to the whole this game shaped my brain and how I think thing, I played this game at a young age. My dad had bought the game for PS1, and as all good sons do, I sat down right next to him and was in awe of the world in front of me. At first, it was just the aliens, of course, but it didn't take long for him to pass the controller over to me, and soon enough we were co-commanders. I handled the geoscape and he handled the battlescape, but he was always there to help me out, and I at least felt like I was helping him out, but looking back right now, I think that was probably just wishful thinking. So through several campaigns, either alongside my dad or on my own, I think this game made me a patient thinker. Most of the time, I think this comes in handy. I'm an analyzer, and I like to follow down every possible path before making a critical decision. And if you knew anything about XCOM before this episode, you've probably seen the 99% misses at point-blank range. So I'm also okay learning from, let's call them non-successes. It's influenced my hobbies today too. For example, it led to my love of chess, which I use today to keep my brain fresh, and it also taught me the patience to be bad at chess, because I'm not very good. One thing that I would be remiss if I didn't mention is that I recently, by recently I think I mean the last few years, I put money towards a Kickstarter for a book called Monsters in the Dark by David L. Craddock, which is all about the making of this original game. The Kickstarter was successful and I got my hands on a copy, and it has only deepened my understanding and love of this game even more. And if you're a fan and you have played the game, then I could not recommend this book more. Now, if you haven't played this game at all, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everybody, even if you are a strategy enthusiast. It could be tough to go back to after almost 30 years, and there are other spiritual successors today, like the new XCOM games, Xenonauts, which recently put a sequel into early access, and you have Phoenix Point, the 2019 game that was created by none other than Julian Gallup, the original creator of XCOM. If you are interested, though, there are loads of mods available that make this game a lot smoother, more balanced, along with fixing a load of bugs that existed in the original. Speaking of which, that's something else that probably taught me a lot of patience. Another scenario that I've heard from people is that if you've played the new XCOM games and thought to yourself, that was a bit too easy, then you have truly stumbled upon the right game. And it is perpetually on sale on Steam for less than $5. While jumping back this far in time isn't for everybody, still this game remains an essential part of who I am, and I hope that I was able to properly express my appreciation for this game today during this episode. Thank you so much to Matt for inviting me on today's show and to letting me host a little bit. This was a ton of fun. And yeah, maybe if nothing else, you'll just be encouraged to look up the history of this game and to discover the influence it has had. Because there are loads of concepts today that have been extrapolated all the way from this original game. So there's a lot of strategy that would not exist without this game that came out amongst hits like Doom and Mortal Kombat, games that were flashy, were quick, were fighting, were shooting, but yet this game was able to make a space for itself during that time period, and man, okay, I'm getting a little lost in the sauce here, so I think I'm going to wrap it up, but thank you to Matt, thank you to Fun and Games for letting me do this show today, thank you so much. I've been Jay, the host of Super Bracket Bros, and remember, happy gaming.
Do you feel like you're the only person in your circle who wants to go deep about video games regularly?
We were like that too, until now.
Welcome to Crossplay Conversations, the brand new bi-weekly topical video game podcast from Luke Lewis,
Joseph Hooper,
And Jacob McCord.
with many years of breaking it down separately on shows like the Left Behind Game Club, Player Podcast, and Lukewarm Games, the gang is finally coming together to publish their gaming group chat in audio form every other week.
Expect roundtable reviews of the latest games, profiles of upcoming indies, and insightful conversations about essential topics in the video game industry. All with a mostly positive, insightful, and fun style.
Crossplay Conversations debuts on August 1st with brand new episodes hitting every other Tuesday. Help us out by subscribing on your podcast platform of choice to get the first episodes delivered straight to your feed.
And follow us on Twitter at Crossplay Convos for updates about the show.
Cheers
and happy gaming.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.